Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being the show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of iZombie. A very, very good episode of iZombie where we have Liv eating the brain of a guy named Dan who was a huge nerd and DM for, he literally died in the middle of a D&D campaign, which I also appreciate that basically not everyone, but at least like two of the people that were part of his game. There's the dude Steve, who was the tech guy that popped. I thought it was so interesting. It's like, oh yeah, they just threw this random tech guy in. It's like, oh, because he pops up in this particular episode. Plus also Jimmy, which I love the fact is because basically like there's a lady that they play with named Zoe, and like pretty much every dude in the group, Dan included. I mean, granted, he was sleeping with Zoe. Had a whole like, what was it, like role playing like halfling thing, and she's got. I thought for a second, I thought like, oh, her hairy legs. I was like, oh, is that real? Like, I'm not trying to shame anyone, but it just kind of caught me off guard. It's like, no, that's probably part of the whole halfling situation. But it's like he was sleeping with her, but everyone else had a thing for her. Steve had one. He went all the way he is, kind of all Mr. Deep and dark, you know, Mr. really into vampires and death and stuff like that. It's like, oh, he did like became like that for Zoe. There's also the dude Diego who had a thing for Zoe. Interesting enough, that's the map maker dude from The Magicians, like Fillory's map maker. That's him. I was like, map maker dude. He even has Zoe's name tattooed. Also Jimmy too. I guess it's one of those situations where it's like, yeah, it's like you're nerdy dudes and you're with a nerdy chick and she's like pretty and everything and she's into the stuff that you're into. It's like, why would you not like have a super crush on her and everything? But I also love the fact is because at first I didn't recognize who Jimmy was, but then I was like, all right, Jimmy's the sketch artist, and like Clive was going through his book and he's up showing Liv a picture of her, like he from the Dominatrix episode, because like she kind of whipped him into shape and he was like super into it. And I remember he was like, Clive, could you like knock next time or whatever? So that was so. I mean, overall, I just love Liv as this because for one, it's just I used to love like Robbie being so against it. He's like, oh my god, these guys, yep, it's a game for nerds. And then like, you know, you have like Liv being like, I could so totally see you being so into this game. He's like, do I look like a nerd to you? And then they run into him and he's like, see, I told you, nerds. And also considering later on, it's like, oh, it'll help out with the case and everything. So Liv is like, we'll do a campaign. Everyone was super against it except for Robbie. He was super into it. And I love what Major was like, yeah, my name is Sir something. And she's like, I don't remember you getting a knighthood. It's like, oh no, he didn't. And like his name is just Sir. And she's like, I got my eyes on you. And Pate was super not into it. It's like she's like, and she says something I really appreciate. She's like, why are we even going out to fight this Lynch thing? Why don't we just not kill Ed? Tie like Liv's character up and just take the stuff that we were going to get as a reward anyway. And Major's like points out like good idea, and it's like she's like, and she attacks her, and then like Robbie's like character's like, oh, I try to defend her. It's like you fail miserably and just fall in failure in front of her. It's like, oh, she's dead, and Peyton's like, oh well, I guess I'm dead. I'm gonna believe. But then like Robbie's like, my character comes over and tries to breathe life into her. She's like, no, I'm good. I start going off towards the light, but like she ends up being saved and everything. It's just like, and then later on you kind of slow fade into later on. They're all super into the game except for Peyton. Everyone's having so much fun. I love it. There's a moment where Liv has a vision like, okay, we're done with the game, and Peyton's about to stand up. Clive grabs the shoulders like, no, we're not done yet. It's like super against it, but then like really got into it. I really appreciate it. I guess because it resonates with me because I was never really into D&D. Like, obviously, you have, like, great D&D games, like, especially on YouTube. Like, one of my particular, like, you know, is Critical Role, because, for one, it's, like, a bunch of voice actors that I'm familiar with, and I love their work, so there's that. Also, probably the first one I really, really got into was, like, SourceFed Nerds D&D. You know, it started by mods, so I really appreciate that. But what I also appreciate about this whole situation is, like, Liv kind of being so trapped. Like, I always love that about when she gets so engrossed by the brain that she can't handle it. Like, to the point, like, she would always have to roll dice just to make sure she goes somewhere. Like, if she's like, oh, what should we do next? She rolls the dice. We do that. And then the fact of the matter is she's going at it with Steve at the beginning, like, oh, you're an idiot for doing this, and that. Like, that's why all your characters died that one time, because you made such a bonehead move. Like, what made you think you should do this? Like, really going into it hard. There's even a point later on in the episode, like before she goes on a date with Justin, she's like, Major, take these so I make sure that I'm not, you know, completely driven by this. Like, I don't need these anymore, you know. Which also kind of brought up an interesting thing too, because she tried to eat some other brains, like, you know, the brains that the Fillmore Graves has. Obviously, like Major brings up the fact that he has a stockpile of it that he no longer needs. But I guess if you eat enough, it counteracts the brains that you're already on. I guess is what I mean. Has that ever come up before? Like eating a new brain will immediately counteract the one you've already got in your system. I think I vaguely remember that possibly coming up before. I'm just not quite sure. But I mean, these were obviously different because these are like made so it's like you don't get any vision, so maybe they don't kick in as quickly as other brains would. Like I said, I get the feeling like Liv has done that before. Like she wanted to move off a brain so quickly, she got the next brain she could and ate it to counteract that. So granted, there's still no like immediate there's no telling like how long it takes to transition over to that new brain. It probably it takes a while for it to kind of digest in her system and stuff like that. What I would assume. So. Well, what's really interesting, the fact is, it's not a case that was solved this episode. Like, this is kind of interesting because this is like the second case in this episode that's kind of like, it's not so open and shut. Because before they could really dive any deeper, because it turns out Dan was actually connected to some, like, because basically there was a secret room he had, there was computers and everything, and it's like, there was Russian on it, and it's like, later on, it's like, oh yeah, the case is no longer Clyde's because there's actually... the FBI is actually taking this case because it might have been like a Russian hacker or something like, you know, he might have been assassinated for like trying to hack into Russian like information and stuff like that. I mean, that's as far as we go, but I'm sure maybe it might not be next episode, but eventually we might kind of trail back to this. Also, it turns out that Bazio, I legitimately never learned her name. Like, if I did, I always forgot it. So I always refer to her as like, oh, the FBI lady that Clive is dating, but would refer to her by her last name. But Bazio is back. She's actually running the case. And obviously some problems between her and Clive, which sucks. But it makes you wonder, will Clive actually tell her the truth? Because I was wondering about this whole situation because she's like, oh, yeah, you were right about, you know, Major not being a mass murderer. He was just a mass kidnapper, which is like... Okay, so, because I was wondering about that too, because that comes up in the episode and everything, and I kept wondering, like, why is everyone still referring to him as a chaos killer? It's like, oh, because even when everything was said and done, like, it still labeled him as the person who kidnapped all those people. I guess they had to keep the story straight. They couldn't, like, lie about certain things. They couldn't, I mean, it probably would have helped Major, but they needed to keep the story as straight as possible, so, I don't know. Like, to me, like, I thought he was all up in the clear, but it's like, I guess they had to stick to the story because, like, if they change too many details, people get suspicious. It's like, to tell a really good lie, you got to make sure there is some truth added to it. So by making him the chaos killer, it makes things a little less complicated. At least that's my understanding of it. It's like, I feel like it should have been easy to clear his name, but I guess because everything was already set in stone of everyone believing him, there's all this evidence. It's like they couldn't necessarily make all the evidence disappear. So it's like he has to kind of take the fall for that particular situation. At least my understanding of it. So, but Bazio is not kind of having it with Clive because it's like, you know, because he's like, I'm still thinking about you. I've constantly thought about you. It's like it's sad because it's like he wants to tell her the truth about everything, but it's like he doesn't want to get her involved in all of this. Like, obviously, like, as you remember, like, the reason why they fell apart was because of the whole Major situation. And that's because it's like he found out the truth about zombies and everything. And it's like, I'm curious, will he actually tell her the truth or not? I don't think he will. Maybe he will. But the thing is, like, it's such a dangerous world, especially with things kind of being the way they are. And who's to say Bazio will act rationally? Like, Clive's handled this whole zombie thing pretty well, just mainly because it's like he's known good zombies like live, so obviously that changed his perspective. Like, if he meant probably like if his first meeting with a zombie was like Blaine and stuff like that, probably wouldn't have been all that good. But it's because he's worked with Liv. She's done such a good job. She's helped him out. She's his partner and everything. So I think that kind of influenced that. But it's like, would Bazio see things the same way? Would she just look at someone like Liv? Like, would she share like people like Harley's? I mean, she might. Well, I mean, who's to say? Like, you don't know how most people will react. I mean, let's not forget when Peyton found out. It's like, whoa, that's crazy. Oh my God, she disappeared for a while, then finally came back. Major didn't have the most positive introduction to zombies. So it's just. I guess it really depends on the person and their introduction and everything. So I mean, we'll just kind of have to see on that front. But I mean, who's to say she won't kind of turn into more of a problem? But I mean, this might be an opportunity for her and Clive to kind of connect. But until he tells her the truth, I don't think she'll ever really give him another chance. Like, I mean, granted, she's in town and everything, so she's probably going to be around a while because, like I said, I was like, oh, maybe not next episode, but maybe the following episode. But it definitely seems like this would probably be a long-running case. It's going to be like an extended story, so... Because obviously also in this episode, like, I was wondering, I brought it up, like, last episode, too. It's like, what about the Weckler situation? you actually have Peyton actually finding out that Weckler, there's no way he would have actually gotten a dominatrix, because basically he had kind of wasn't all there in his head, because he would see stuff that wasn't there. Like he kept seeing his dead wife, and because of that, like he wouldn't do anything his wife wouldn't approve of, and that means spending whatever little money he had on the dominatrix, which then immediately my brain goes to. And I caught glimpses of the next episode in a like corner of my eye and stuff like that, because I try to avoid watching previews. I usually stare away from the screen. Like I look long enough though, so I can make sure that the next episode is in fact the next week or whatever. I mean, obviously in this particular case it is, but my brain, like, I don't know, maybe there's stuff I caught that was connected to something else, but I was wondering, like, the fact of the matter is, as we know, with the brain soaking into blue liquid, it makes the visions last a lot longer, makes them a lot more intense. This episode kind of brings up, maybe it's not even just like eating a little bit. Well, no, because it's a combination too, because Blaine ended up kind of extending the liquid. So maybe that's what amplified the effects even longer. But also it's like for Liv, Ravi probably doing things exactly the same way as he did before. So maybe it's just the blue liquid, like however concentrated the blue liquid is, or maybe it's determined by how much of the brain you eat. So that really depends. So, or maybe might even affect like what part of the brain you actually eat. But that kind of makes me think like, oh, if singing Dead Lovers might be an opportunity to bring back Drake or Lowell, like two significant others, like they kind of like she'll be seeing them in her head. I mean, that's not the first time she's had a brain like that, because the last time she had one was Donnie's brother, his twin brother, isn't it Scotty? I think that was his brother, his twin brother, Scotty. She'd ate his brain and was kind of like, it had that whole like misadventure with that weatherman, but it was like all in her head the entire time. She thought she told Major the truth about herself and everything, but it turned out to just be kind of another part of her delusions and everything. So I'm wondering, is it going to be something similar to that and amplified even more because of the whole brain thing? But once again, like I said, that all depends on what factors make it the way it is. Like, because the thing is, like, obviously, like, you have Blaine running his operation trying to do that, because it's like, if we can like heighten how long these visions last and how they trigger, like how they feel and everything, then it's definitely going to sell like hotcakes and stuff like that. And Donnie ate one and lost his crap. The other dude didn't. He was like, oh yeah, having fun with the visions and stuff like that. But he even asked Donnie, he's like, how much of that brain did you eat? And we don't really know. We only saw him scoop out that one bit, but who's to say he didn't eat more? Plus Blaine did say, like I said, brought up earlier, he did mess with the formula a little bit, so it's even more powerful than the one Ravi made. So also, I did not realize that the guy we got introduced to last episode, Jason Doring's character, that is Vivian's brother, Chase. I was thinking that, but I was like, no, he's just some military dude. It's like, no, that's her brother, Chase. Kind of the same hard ass that shot Justin last episode, which he ends up telling Liv about that. And because basically Chase kind of gets all in Liv's face about the whole situation. It's like, oh, do you have any idea about who killed Wally and his family? And it's like, no, but we're kind of getting closer. It's like, do you realize the severity of this situation? Because the fact of the matter is, we need to act fast before things turn extremely hectic and whatnot. Kind of a bit of a hard ass. There's the whole Baracus situation where he ends up getting shot, which to me, I immediately go, that's a little too convenient that you end up getting shot. And not only did you just get shot anywhere, you got shot in the chest. Could have easily been a headshot. I mean, granted, maybe it's just someone that doesn't like you that targeted you. Maybe that'd be something that seemed like that might not be like the main case next episode. That seemed more like that might be something that the zombies are kind of like, oh, we'll handle that on our own. We don't want to kind of get humans involved and stuff like that. Because even Chase was kind of giving Liv crap about, like, oh yeah, the fact of the matter is, oh, you're working with Ravi. Oh yeah, your partner, the human you told about zombies. She's like, for one, Ravi's known my secret for a long time, and he's done nothing. He's put his life, his love life, in jeopardy for the sake of keeping our secret and helping us on multiple occasions. It's like, screw you, like. Ravi has not let that secret go, and he's been by Liv's side. He has not turned against her in any shape or form, so it's like, but you see a smile across his face, so it's like, part of me thinks like he was just trying to push her buttons to see how she react, trying to get a true test of who she is. But the point I was trying to make is like, I get the feeling like that maybe that was someone coming after him not knowing he was a zombie, but I feel like it's just a little coincidental. Like the same thing with the whole Vivian situation. I feel like there's got to be more to it. Either Vivian's leaving her brother in charge because this is a plan that she has until things can kind of get resolved or whatever. Because once again, like I brought up before, like maybe there's like some insider thing. Maybe Chase was behind Vivian accident. Maybe she was behind, like, there's so many possibilities that could go. But like this whole attack, because they even bring it up themselves, like Blaine kind of mentioned it later. It's like, oh man, after this attack, Baracus is definitely going to rise in the polls and stuff like that. And I'm like, so there's a strong possibility this was like set up either by Baracus or maybe even by Chase, or maybe it was a collaboration to kind of help him in the polls and stuff like that. It's like, oh, we knew you're a zombie. Bullet wound ain't gonna stop you. So I don't know. Because another thing too that was kind of interesting is that Peyton kind of brings up the Weckler case to Baracus. Is like, yeah, like, that's her boss and everything. It's like, yeah, something's fishy about that. It's like, usually, you got, the case is cleared. Like sometimes you don't, you don't mess with a gift. So it's like, just let it go. And then Peyton's like, the fact is he knows a lot more, and Liv lets her in on it. It's like, yeah, he knows about it because he's one of her clients. Like, really, tell me everything you know. So then immediately my brain goes, so I was immediately going like, oh, this must have something to do with Mr. Boss. Turns out Mr. Boss just popped back in the town, so obviously he has nothing to do with this. I was constantly wondering about you, Mr. Boss, and lo and behold, we find your way back in town, mainly for his money and payback, which is definitely going to be interesting considering the fact is that Blaine is a zombie again. He's not a human, so any confrontation is definitely going to play out a little bit differently this time, but nevertheless. So now it puts Baracus on the spotlight. So it's like, oh yeah, you're running for mayor and everything, and the last thing you want is some scandal getting out about you going to a dominatrix and everything. It's like, oh yeah, I won't want my son to find out about it. More so than anything, it's like, more so than that, it's like it will ruin his reputation. He'll never recover from it. It'll complicate things. So at the very least, it puts him at the top of the board. Definitely for Peyton, too. I mean, because he has the push and the pull to kind of decide to do something like that, especially because he's running for mayor. He probably has, and being Peyton's boss and everything, he probably knows, like, the right connections and knows the right people to kind of make things. Because whoever it was that Weckler was, taking a fall for, like, was powerful enough for him to be like, if I tell you the truth, I'm dead. So, I mean, sadly, it didn't change anything. He ended up dead anyway, so. But another thing that popped up this episode also is we ended up finding out, like, I brought it up a little bit, the whole chaos killer situation with Major. Apparently, like, Robbie's been protecting him this entire time because there's been, like, a crap ton of letters that were constantly being mailed to their place. But Robbie usually dealt with it because, like, he usually would probably get home beforehand because, obviously Major was working at Fillmore Graves, which the fact is that he was home and everything makes me think, he's kind of, well, I don't know, maybe he just happened to come home and saw that, and maybe he started looking through things, like maybe he looked for something in Robbie's room, and nevertheless, he found all these letters Robbie's been hiding. There are people who've been sending him letters kind of like, oh, you should burn in hell, you're a terrible person, blah, blah, blah. It's like, the sad thing of the matter is, like, for people, it doesn't even matter. The fact is that none of those people are dead, so it's not like he killed anyone. It's still the fact his name was associated, once again, kind of with kidnapping on them, so it sucks for Major that he can't quite. The one place he felt like, oh, I can be okay was like Fillmore Graves, but that's no longer a place for him because he's no longer a zombie. He can, like I said, he's still pretending to be one and everything, but it still doesn't change. Like I don't know, like, whether his position has been fully exposed because he was there at the party, last episode when Chase showed up and everything. So I'm curious about that. It doesn't seem like he's been outed because, like, the only person that really knew was Vivian, and she's dead and everything, quote unquote dead. So. But there is a lady that sent him a letter named Shauna, who's basically, she's in a position of like, oh yeah, she was accused of something that she didn't do, and so that's why she's trying to send a letter to Major, which Major kind of ignores it at first, but later on, he ends up, calling her over to his house, so that's where things end there, but I doubt things are just going to be that simple. Mainly because it's like, I wanted him and Liv to be together, but obviously her and Justin is like, they kind of have to be separated because it's like, well, they kind of have to date their respective situation. Like, she has to date another zombie, he has to date another human, so. I mean, doesn't necessarily mean this is a whole dating situation because for him, it's like someone who can understand and him to talk to because, like, I mean, outside of her and his group of friends, he doesn't have anybody else. So, because no one else knows the truth about the whole situation. I mean, the few people that do have to keep hush hush about it and everything. So it's a lot to kind of be held against him, So definitely going to be some bonding there. I wonder, like, obviously, like, there's more to it, but I'm wondering, is it going to be a situation where, like, she's sent there to kind of get, Major to confess or something, or whether she is there legitimately just to help him. I'm always pessimistic about people because because every show I'm like that. I'm like, oh, this person just randomly shows up. They've got to have some ulterior motives. Just like Caddy. We have not seen her for a while, so I'm like, I'm so suspicious of that. The fact is they haven't shown her in a while. So, Also, haven't shown Kavanaugh in a little while either. I was kind of worried about him, but I'm like, if anyone, it has to be Gaddy, because that's still a storyline element too. Is like, who stole all those extra cures and stuff like that? Because at the same time, we also have like Robbie's side of the story in this. Well, at least at the beginning, is he's trying to calm everyone, because everyone at that meeting that Harley set up, and it's like, oh, they're zombies, they're real, everything, but it's like, Robbie's like, oh, because they want to kidnap zombies, and he's like, hey, you shouldn't do that. He kind of, it's one of those situations. I think I kind of brought it up earlier in the episode, and it kind of fits this parallel as well. It's like, hey, when you are dealing, with telling a lie, stay very closely to the truth, because like the truth is a lot easier to tell than a lie is. So obviously, he tells the truth of like, hey, the fact of the matter is, this is who I was. I worked at the CDC and stuff like that. I've realized certain things, and I'm like, oh, look them up and everything. Yellow Jacket from Beyond looked him up. Was like, oh yeah, he's legit. And so he's like, hey guys, let's not kidnap any. We, the fact of the matter is, a scratch from them could turn you into a zombie. It's like, what will end up happening is we'll end up causing the epidemic that we're trying to avoid. It's like, give me time. I'm on the verge of creating a vaccine that will make it so that humans are impervious to a zombie scratch and won't be infected, which obviously total BS. I mean, he was working on a cure and everything, but the last thing he would want to tell them is like, oh, I'm working on a cure, which is like, but I guess more so than anything, it's just like, they would probably be like, nah, screw that, we're going to kill them anyway. Like, they don't deserve our mercy, they deserve to be human again, they've eaten brains, they're forever foul type of thing. So, I don't know, we'll see. And there's also the girl that Ravi met named Rachel, which once again, new people popping up. I'm highly suspicious. She's apparently a journalist too, because she's like, oh yeah, I came here to get photos of the zombies and stuff like that. She's initially not. She's like, oh yeah, I'm totally against this whole kidnapping idea, because even if they're zombies, even the guy who started all this, Billy, by telling the truth about zombies and stuff like that, even he was like, I'm not really sure I'm all for kidnapping people. It's like, these aren't people, these are zombies, these are monsters. Nut up or shut up, Billy type of thing. So... but I'm very suspicious of Rachel. I definitely get the feeling like we're going to be seeing her around, considering she's a journalist and all that. And probably pop up around Ravi at some point in time. So that'd probably complicate things, especially considering at the end of the near the end of the episode, where it's like Ravi's like, okay, so what's up? And it's like, oh yeah, Harley pulls him out. It's like, we caught one. I was like, I thought you said you weren't going to kidnap any. It's like, no, we ended up finding one of them around, and the one he found was Donnie, because Donnie, so hyped up on the brain and everything, he's just kind of losing his damn mind and everything, ended up getting caught. So that blows. Also, interesting thing too is that Blaine's dad, he is feeding his dad, so his dad's not completely going to have be a rotted zombie where it's just like there's no humanity left, just like those type of zombies. So it seems like he's not going to be in that state, because Blaine is feeding his dad and everything. So that's kind of interesting. Also, just kind of a little side note that I appreciated, an episode where Clive was like, they're in the store, he's like, oh yeah, like, I like the Flash and everything, and then, he gives his reasons, like, nah, and then he's like, I'm messing with you. The real reason why I like him, because he's super fast and everything, and I like the name. I'm like, shut up. Obviously that's like a little wink and nudge to the fact that this show airs like after the Flash, so obviously it's like, shut up, but I appreciate it nonetheless. Overall, like a very, very good episode. Like I said, like some very interesting developments and turns in the stories that I'm very interested to see where they go next episode. Whether anything I've brought up is like, oh, that might be a possibility or not. I mean, at least going into the future, but probably, like I said, I'm so interested in that, because it obviously was like the last thing of the episode, but the Mr. Boss thing is like coming back to town and everything. I hope for his sake that doesn't kind of blow up in his face. I mean, who knows? We might even have a situation where he ends up becoming a zombie himself. I mean, might even be a situation where he ends up like following Blaine, trying to get his revenge, finds out about Blaine's dad, and ends up joining forces. It's like, oh, we both hate your son. Let's join together and kill him. Okay. It's a strong possibility on that front, but, we'll just have to wait and see. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.